Okay, so we're ready to begin. Um, Once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you live in the world. This is Dr. Ferdinand, and we are going to begin our written communication webinar. So just to let you know, so that you have a game plan as to what we're going to try to accomplish. We're going to start with, I'm going to spend 5 minutes giving you a little introduction to the way that I imagine it through the Gold Standard Master Series GAMSAT book. And then we're going to move to some strategies. So how to organize your essay, what strategies and options for creative approach to your essay writing. Then I will present the um, essay topic, and then you will try it. And you will mostly just plan the essay because we don't have time to complete a full essay because this is a 1 hour webinar. And as you know, the written communication section is 65 minutes. But I'll get you to plan the essay. And then if you want, you can share some of your ideas, and then I'll read them out. So now, of course, if any of you are also taking the tutorials that I give, the 2 hours weekly tutorials, then the first 20 minutes is going to be a little bit of repetition for you, but at least perhaps it will be revision. Let's put it that way. Remind you of some of the key issues. Of course, we can't go into everything, but at least we'll be able to discuss some of the key issues. The other thing is, I'm just going to mention, I'm going to be, using the paperback book here. But if you have the ebook, online access to the ebook, either through the website, gamsatprep.com, or through Amazon Kindle, then the content for this year is the same. And also finally want to mention that for those of you, some people say, oh, I can't afford these books and things like that. I want to let you know that we are the only company that I'm aware of, the only GAMSAT company that I'm aware of that gave libraries their permission to have the books on loan. And that means you can access the newest edition. You just tell the librarian to update or whatever, or they already have it. And this is for Australia, the UK, Ireland, and Singapore. So there's libraries in all those locations that also hold on to gold standard books. Okay, so, and we always give permission to use these books in social media if you happen to have the books and you like to show how you are studying. You also notice that written communication, we put here formally section 2. I know most of you are still calling this section 2, but ACER does not, because ACER moved written communication to be the first section of the exam. As you guys know, it's going to be next week if you're doing the so-called September GAMSAT. But so it's earlier than the two multiple choice sections that are on the same day. So you'll be sitting the exam at home or in a secure location. And I'll just mention to you, little tips throughout. There's studies to suggest that you perform better on tests where you study, the location where you study. So it is preferable for the next week, a couple of things, that whatever room you decided you're going to be uh, sitting the real exam, that's where you study written communication. And also, whenever you're doing practice written communication essays, try to do it at the same time that you will be sitting the real exam. So the timing, the length of it, and also the location, all those things have a certain effect. And this is just to remind you of the relative importance of written communication compared to the other sections of the exam. Some medical schools do it one third, one third, but some medical schools do it half the science and half the non-science by weighting the sciences section twice. Okay, and most important quote that you're going to hear from me about this section of the exam is a quote about GAMSAT preparation. Of course, this person doesn't know anything about about written communication, but this quote truly applies. So, in terms of your preparation for this section, write, rewrite. When not writing or rewriting, read. I know of no shortcuts. Perfect explanation as to how optimally to prepare for this section of the exam. I would put a little asterisk for I know of no shortcuts. Actually, there's a couple of little shortcuts. You can go to YouTube this week and change your score. What? Just in a few days, you can change your score? Yes, because every day you can spend 10 minutes going to YouTube and looking for crash course history or crash course philosophy. And there's no one video that you have to watch. Just look at any topic that interests you. Watch for 10 minutes, a couple of videos you can watch in 10 minutes and take brief notes. Watch, and then you're going to read from your notes daily leading up for the exam. And just that additional information, knowledge, it'll change your score if you use some of that information on the real exam. And of course, on the real exam, you will have two A4 sheets of paper as scratch paper so that you can take notes as you're preparing your essay. And so if you have watched some of these videos, taking some brief notes, one of the things you can do is as soon as the exam begins, like officially begins, then you can just spend, 30 seconds, 45 seconds doing the so-called brain dump, where you just put on the paper all the ideas that you've been memorizing during the week from philosophers or from different points in history that you just learned about in the next few days, because those videos are really good at summarizing information. And in the book, which is very helpful, it shows you the topics for a period of more than 10 years. And what's going to happen is that when you go through these topics, you're going to see that there's a lot of overlap. There are topics that keep coming up. Like, for example, half of the topics for writing test A relate in some way to politics. And so, it means that you can prepare for some of the essays, and then you can actually apply that information to many more topics, even though the exact topic doesn't come up. I'm not trying to say memorize a response and then use it no matter what. You can't do that, but there's overlap. And so you adjust the content that you learn for that purpose. And then there are many examples. There are ways to design your essay, which we're going to be talking about. There are many beautiful words and expressions that can elevate your use of the English language. For some of you, these are all easy expressions. For others, they might not be things that you use on a daily basis. And the point is not to try to get you to memorize all this, but to identify a handful of beautiful expressions that you can use in different contexts. For example, here it says persona non grata, which means an unwelcome person. It's a Latin expression. And to use that expression in an essay that talks about immigration, which is obviously a hot topic lately, is a very, very powerful expression. Doesn't matter if you're for or against. The point is that that expression applies to both. And there's many expressions like that. Anyway, there's a workbook element, And then at the end, the sine qua non for this book, which is another Latin expression, it means without which nothing, is the section on gold ideas that presents 100 model essays from students who scored 70 plus on the real exam, which is a really great score. And they completed these essays in the appropriate period of time, 2 essays in 65 minutes. And their essays are really fantastic. And it means you can go through this and you can take notes on ideas, anecdotes, metaphors that you can use for your own essays. Obviously, you can't memorize someone's essay and use it. That's makes no sense. And but you can look at some of the ideas and crunch it down. I'm not trying to say that the Master Series is the only book in the world that you can use to prepare for this exam, because that's not true. You know, you do have other options. I'd like to introduce you to a book from A.C. Grayling. And I mentioned already that the Master Series is in many libraries in several different continents. Well, this is another book that's in many, many libraries in several different continents. And you could also get it for less than 10 secondhand. 10 what? 10 euros, 10 quid, 10 Australian dollars, it doesn't matter because secondhand you can get it cheap, and this book hasn't changed in decades. But it's a book that students generally like because it has very short essays on topics that are common for the real exam. So um, so and you don't just read it, you read it and you take very brief notes, and that helps to elevate it. Okay, if we can, Viv, if we can get the handout for today, and I'll quickly go through this, and then you will be presented with your comments so that you can create your own masterpiece, at least plan your own masterpiece as time allows. So, okay, great. So you have the handout there. So I'm going to go through this briefly. You know, it's been called historically section 2. It's really the first section of the exam. You have 65 minutes. It used to be 60 minutes with a 5-minute reading time, but now you can just complete the test in 65 minutes. That's the current thing. So once the 65 minutes begins, you can write on your scratch paper, you can start typing your response, read the quotations, whatever. So you're going to have 4 to 5 quotations or comments, and they appertain to a common theme. And that's the key thing. So I'm going to underline that a little later, because you're not writing about a comment. That's not the instructions that Acer is giving. You're writing about the theme of all the comments, and you're going to utilize one or more of the comments in order to advance your ideas. So you're going to articulate your perspective, synthesize ideas and concepts, express ideas in a logical way. And the least important part is standard English, appropriate grammar and spelling and punctuation. So, you know, of course, if your English is so bad that it's difficult to understand what you're trying to say, then of course that's going to affect your score. But a few mistakes here and there, it's not going to do anything. So as I mentioned before, this is 25 to 33% of your GAMSAT score. Who does well? You know, people who have natural charisma, you know, the kind of people who walk into a party and a spontaneous circle forms around them because their stories are so interesting that everyone wants to hear them and so on. So when a person can take that charisma and put it on and type it up, then yes, it's really good. And there's also people who just have skills. And yeah, that's skills spelt with a Z or Z. And that means mad skills. And these are people who they have a degree in philosophy, English literature, history, or whatever, or a law degree, or economists. And so they have so many examples, and they can go into a lot of detail for these examples. But then there's the great majority of students who sit this exam, and they have to complete 20 to 40 essays before the real exam to really get going, to really have it so that they are able to get to the next level. You'll hear me talking about titles. Titles are very helpful if they are inviting, challenging, you know, but if you're going to write a title like someone in primary school or in in secondary school where you're just saying the whole idea right in the title, then then it might not be worth it for you to write a title. How many words? People often ask this. It's on the one hand, it is true that it tends to be that students who write more tend to do better. But it's not always the case. Sometimes people will write the equivalent of one page, but they did something really creative, and then they get a great score. And then, some people who, write 3 pages, sometimes, minority of times, they're wandering with their ideas so much that it becomes difficult to understand what they're trying to say. But in general, longer means in general that people are exploring details better. So, but your ideas and the passion with which you write are going to be the key things. Okay, so your response obviously has to be relevant to the theme. As I mentioned before, it's not that you are writing about a comment, because if you only write about a comment, it might be that you take the comment out of context. That's not consistent with the overall theme of the other comments. And I have to mention this about the issue of the theme. It's not ambiguous. You're going to see words that are repeated in the different comments. So it becomes clear to you what this is all about. Or you're going to see instead of the word repeated, it will be a synonym or an antonym. And either way, you're going to be able to see, okay, I get it. It's about this topic. That is usually clear. So you have to identify the theme before you start writing, before you start deciding which comments you want to use. And, Acer says you can use one or more comments. Some students think, oh, if I use them all, I'll get a better score. It's not true at all. There are some students who only use one comment and get 70 plus, and others who use multiple comments and don't do as well. The issue is that you're using them in the proper context and you are advancing your thoughts and ideas. So well thought out opinion, obviously, sound reasoning, evidence. And so even this week, you might think, oh, I don't have a lot of evidence for political things. But you can, as I said, watch those crash course history, crash course philosophy, and also I'm going to recommend later The Economist. So you can spend just 10 to 15 minutes a day this week just looking at The Economist and just reading any article that interests you. Doesn't matter what the topic is. Anything that interests you, and take brief notes. And then that's going to elevate the value of your essay. And of course, well structured. So now we're going to talk about the structure. What is the ideal way for you to structure your essay? So what is your approach? So this is the gold standard GAMSAT 5-minute, 5-step plan. First, you're going to read the comments, obviously. And then you're going to identify the theme, understand this is the theme I'm going to write about, and I'm going to use this or that comment in order to advance my ideas. Then you pre-write. Never just start typing, because there's no copy paste. So if you put things in the wrong location, then you might end up having to retype a paragraph when you're under pressure for time. It doesn't make any sense. So you take your A4 sheets of paper and you go 1, 2, 3. So introduction, body, conclusion, and you start to put in point form the main ideas that you're going to have for each. Then you're going to organize your essay, and I'm going to speak about how an essay is ideally organized. Then you write Obviously, write, I mean type, and then you proofread. And the proofreading is not because, oh no, I'm going to lose so many marks because I misspelled 3 or 4 words. No, it's probably not even going to affect your score. However, sometimes you misspell a word and then um, it makes it difficult to understand the idea that you're trying to get across in that sentence. And if that sentence was key to a paragraph, that's a disaster. So you're actually trying to correct any issues that you have with spelling or grammar based on whether or not it's affecting the presentation of your ideas. That is, paramount. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the plan. And by the way, I do want to put a little side note. If you have any questions about written communication, you can always come to our forum. We have gamsatprep.com /forum. You can go there, post your questions, and you'll usually get a response within 24 hours. You can also go to the live chat on our website, and you can send information there. And certainly, if you have some ideas for the essay we're going to be doing, if you want to share your ideas, you can go to the live chat on gamsatprep.com, and you can send it there, and then I will read it to everyone. Okay, so now let's look at the overview, looking at the forest from the trees. This is from Acer. The first task deals with socio-cultural issues. So that's why about half the time there's something related to politics. And the second deals with more personal or social issues. So that could be love, courage, aging, youth, topics like that. And just so you know, 1 year they switched A and B, but that's of no consequence. The point is that usually one essay does one and the other one does more personal. So what are the standard approaches? So I'm going to discuss the standard approach to writing these essays, and then we'll talk about breaking the rules. So first of all, standard approach. Test A, because it has the socio-cultural and political, the standard approach is argumentative. So I'm going to let A stand for argumentative. And that means that in the first paragraph or introduction, you present your thesis. So you have your idea based on the theme, and then you're using one of the quotes or comments, and you put that in your own words. You make it so that they understand that you're using that comment, but you're putting it in your own words. And if you're a person who can write a lot, then you can also give an example of the thesis. That would be very powerful. And then you move to the body of the essay. And this is your antithesis, opposite of thesis, or antithesis. And in this segment, you're starting with on the other hand. However, there are circumstances in which, so you're sort of giving the opposite of the thesis that you presented. And here you must give a detailed example. So you're not going to just say, oh, in World War II, there was a lot of, no, you're going to say from 1939 to 1945 in Europe, you're going to give as much information as you can to indicate your understanding of the topic. And then synthesis. So synthesis is where you present when does this apply and when does this apply? So I know some of you are thinking, oh, so we're just going to sit on the fence. We're going to make things all gray. No, this is assertive. So, a classic example is freedom of speech. So that topic has come up on dozens of GAMSAT tests. Freedom of speech. The question is asked in slightly different ways, but this is the topic. So a classic approach to freedom of speech is to talk about how societies have been able to optimize the liberal democratic societies to optimize access to healthcare, education, better lifestyle, um, living longer, all these different things, because people can share ideas openly and through universities, online, and so on. And in so doing, it advances knowledge. And you can give specific examples in which this has occurred. And then you talk about the opposite, and that is you talk about examples in which people used freedom of speech for deviant reasons. So famous example is, there are some places in the world where it's illegal to, scream fire in a theater if there's no fire, because there are examples in which people have been trampled and died just because of this. Another example is hate speech. History is littered with examples of people using radio or other media to advance hate versus specific groups of people that led to genocide or other forms of violence. And so there has to be a limit. And then the classic resolution to this is that your freedoms end where my freedoms begin. And so by having, obviously you have the freedom to life, liberty, and happiness. And if somebody else is using their freedom of speech in order to impede, your rights, then that's when they are going too far. So that's not sitting on the fence. Now, I know that there are some of you who hate arguing both sides. It's okay. Go according to your strengths. If you're the kind of person who's great at arguing one side and you have lots of evidence for that, and you're thinking about the counter arguments, but you're dealing with that, go for it. You need to write your essays according to your strengths. I'm presenting here how to be safe, but if you have a creative angle, which we will talk about, or if you have a structured essay, but you like to approach it differently, you have to go according to your strengths. If you have objective evidence that you can do it well, then you should do that. Okay, so now writing test B, which is the personal essay, which I remember the B as being personal, which is personal misspelt, but at least you remember. And here you have your introduction, body, and conclusion. The introduction is similar to the thesis. You have your quote. You're going to explain it in your own words. If you have time, you can give examples of that. And then you go to the body of the essay, which will have a minimum of 2 separate paragraphs. The first paragraph is the social implication. So what is the social implication of aging or youth or courage? And so hopefully you have some examples that you saw in Crash Course History or Philosophy, or if you have the time, TED.com. And so you can present that information succinctly. And then I. So now might be the first time all day that you use uh, the pronoun I. And so you turn it inward. It's self-reflection. And this is, everyone likes a self-redemption story. So ideally, you have a story in which you struggled, you looked in the mirror, you were not proud, and then you overcame that. You learned, you studied, you whatever, and then you became a better person as a result. And that should be your personal experience. And then a conclusion where you're wrapping it up. You don't have to present 2 different ideas or an argument. Again, there are some people who will do both essays as an argument. If you're good at it, do it. And other people who will do both essays as a, sort of a personal, reflective type essay. Go according to your strengths. Now, breaking the rules. There are so many ways to do this that could be engaging, and the reader feels compelled to keep reading. In fact, they have no choice because they're being paid for it. But nonetheless, so some people have written letters, dear mom, dear pop, dear editor, dear Mr. President, dear Miss Prime Minister, or even a breakup letter. Imagine a breakup letter gets you into medical school. And so they explore the themes that are in the comments. And some will even have their masterpiece actually use either words from the comments or the entire comment just in the natural way that it is being written. That is very powerful. There's a comment, and the comment ends up being in the words of a response to an editor or a parent or some loved one. Others have written short stories, either fictional, historical, or narratives. Some people, could you imagine writing a poem during that 65 minutes, or one or two poems? It's tremendous. Others, diary entries, putting the dates, dear diary, and then exploring the theme that has been presented. Others have a debate or a conversation between two individuals, and then the two individuals, because remember I told you that for writing task A, because it's argumentative, tends to be argumentative, there tends to be comments that are going to be in exact opposition to each other. So then you can have two people arguing with each other, and they naturally say the comments. So it doesn't need, because it's a hypothetical, a discussion, they don't have to say, comment number three says, I will discuss comment number three now. Instead, it's presented in a far more beautiful, aesthetic manner by having this conversation. You can have social media postings. You can tweet Trump or X Trump. I prefer that expression. And the idea, you can also use acronyms, you know, uh, that you would normally use. But remember, the average age of the people who are correcting is definitely higher than the average age of people who are writing the test. So if you have some acronyms that are unusual, you should spell it out to make sure it's clear. And then if you have no ideas, you can use analogies based on your hobbies, sports or clubs or whatever else, and try to have some twist in your story. And in terms of resources, you know, I showed you there's a section in the Master Series book that presents beautiful words and expressions. You can use that, but obviously there's a million apps you can use to present, words and expressions, beautiful words and expressions to you on a daily basis. Um, Many websites as well if you're not using the gold standard text. And of course, there's exercises in the gold standard text. You ideally would keep up with the debate, local, national, global. So, any local newspapers that you have, or national papers, the Australian, the Guardian, Irish Times, go to the editorial section, which is also called the opinion pages, and have a read and take brief notes. Those newspapers are all on reserve at the uni library. Um, Sometimes they're given off for free in the streets, and of course you can go online. The Meaning Things by AC Grayling, I've already showed you. There are sample essays at gamsatprep.com in the forum. So you can just go to gamsatprep.com and fast forum, and you will see their essays that are sometimes corrected, and you can see the score and you can see the quality. And there are essay correction services. Acer has an essay correction service based on 16 topics, and it's relatively inexpensive. And you can submit it, you can get a score, and most students find that their score is similar to the score that they receive on the real exam. So it's quite helpful. Not all students, okay? I mean, probably 80 to 90% of students find the scores reasonably reflects what they got on the real exams. And by the way, it's the same 16 topics every year. So if you used it before, it's not going to be any different. Gold Standard also has an essay correction service, which we give for free for students who attend our 2-hour tutorials. And that's helpful for getting comments about essay writing and guidance. The scoring cannot be as accurate as ACER because obviously ACER has a larger N value, so to speak. Okay, so now we're going to look at a topic. If we can get the handout for today, please. Oh, actually, you have it already. Sorry. So you can change to the next page, and you're going to have the subject for today. I'm just going to remind you of the instructions just so you don't waste time. So the instructions, you're going to write about the theme, but you're going to look at the comments and you're going to use one or more comments to advance your idea on the theme. And right now, of course, we don't have time for you to complete a full essay. In fact, we're just going to take about 12 minutes for you to plan your essay. So you're just going to put in A4 sheet of paper. Usually you should take 5 minutes to plan your essay, and you can just do that. And then you can start typing your essay, but we're going to finish after 12 minutes. And you can, if you have any special titles, interesting titles that you want to share, you can go to gamsatprep.com, click on the live chat link, and you can provide me that title, and then I'll share it with the class. Or if you are able to write a few sentences or something like that, I'll share that information. Okay, so can we get a clock for 12 minutes, please? Okay, so please begin and good luck. Okay, so that's time. That gives you an idea of, remember I said it's only 5 minutes in order to plan one essay in the written communication. And then you will be writing for about 20 minutes, 22, 23 minutes. And then you'll have a few minutes for your proofreading to confirm that there's no mistakes that will make it difficult to understand. So if you do have something you want to share, a title, a few sentences, you can go to gamsatprep.com and use the live chat button. Otherwise, in your handout, you have an answer. Of course, everyone's going to answer differently, but at least you can read the answer and compare it to what ideas you were coming up with, and what you were going to present, and see whether or not you think that it would have been of that level of quality. Okay, well, that's it for today. We're going to be doing a science one, because obviously we're doing written communication because that's the next section for the exam. But we're going to have a free science webinar so that we're going to look at the toughest questions in section 3 in a gold standard mock exam, which you have free access to. In fact, GAMSATprep.com is the only company in the universe that has a free full-length mock exam with free answers and work solutions. So you can just go to GAMSATprep.com, click on GAMSAT practice test, and you will see that there is a free full-length test, and it is updated to reflect trends. Of course, we never repeat a question that's on the real exam. We would never do such a thing, but we certainly will reflect trends in the reasoning, the type of reasoning required in order to get a good score. So we have that full-length mock exam for free, and we're going to look at the toughest Section 3 questions. I'm going to explain them to you because those are common themes. That's why it's not a random thing that we're doing. It's because obviously these are common themes in the last few years, and we're going to do that in our next free webinar. And so wherever you learned about this webinar, whether it was Zoom, on our website, or whatever else, whatever way you learned about this webinar, that's how you're going to learn about our next webinar before the sciences and humanities section. Well, I hope you best of luck. Oh, okay. So Viv put something in the chat where you can get information. I wish you best of luck on the upcoming exam. Invest some time on a daily basis. Watch some Crash Course History, Crash Course Philosophy, TED.com. Take notes. Don't just watch. You have to take brief notes and look at those notes on a daily basis. And, if you have the time, also improve your lingo so that you will have a more impressive essay. Thank you for your time. See you in the next one. Good luck with your studies. Bye for now.